Hi and welcome. It's Kate O'Hare here with John Vaupel, candidate for District 197 School Board. Thanks for joining us, John, and let's dive right into our interview.
Sounds great.
We are starting all of our interviews with the same question for all candidates, and tell us about your most memorable experience within District 197.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it. So I think it's good for folks to hear voices a little bit more. Most memorable experience. I'm one of those folks that has a hard time picking one favorite thing, like a favorite song, a favorite movie. I have many memorable experiences, and there are a number that stand out. It's, first day of kindergarten for both of my kiddos. That's obviously a big deal. It's the first day of any grade for the start of school, right? Those are really memorable experiences. Volunteering in kindergarten class, doing a science experiment with borax and pipe cleaners and creating cool shapes after they sit overnight. That stands out too. So I sort of have these snapshots and vignettes of things that stand out in my mind. Obviously, when we got to go back to in-school learning, a really big deal. But, what also comes to mind is, there are also the hard moments. And sometimes, in a weird or different way, the hard moments also are the good moments. And that's not always the case. But, I think back to, when I was teaching, and there were a number of moments that were hard in school that were challenging, but there were also, the other side of those bad moments, whether it was the first day of school and a kiddo, screaming because he had never been in a school setting and didn't speak English, to thinking about his last day of kindergarten and how he's singing with his classmates and what a victory that was. And it just makes me think of the moments that as parents, we don't get to see in our schools all the time that our teachers do see. And there are just so many. And so, I whenever I talk to folks in the district and I talk to other folks, I also think it's just important to recognize what teachers do day in and day out before COVID, but especially during COVID. So no single moment, but a lot of real moments. And they happen all the time in our schools because they're great schools.
Indeed. Thanks for that feedback, John. Tell us, how do you feel you are representative of the ISD 197 community?
Yeah, that's it's like a good and a tough question. I know I picked that one. Representative is an interesting word. In some ways, I don't feel that it's up to me to determine whether I am or am not. I still think that's an absolutely fair and good question to ask, but I think the way I answer it is talking about who I am, and I think what I bring to the table, so that community members and parents and anyone else who lives in the district can make that decision for themselves. So, I'm a proud parent of two Mendota kids. They attend schools in our district. So that's something. I'm a product of public schools, a different system, but there's that. I also, I have a lot of different experiences, not just in Mendota Heights in Minnesota. I grew up on the East Coast. I've lived in Boston and New York City and Washington, D.C. and Baltimore. And those experiences opened my eyes, and I was in very different communities, and they were all learning experiences. And I think that's something where, because it sort of broadened my lens. It's helped me think about who I am and how I can be an ally to others. I think that's something that I constantly think about as in my journey in education and just as a human being, is what's my purpose, what's my role. And I think part of it is I'm committed to our students. That's why I love education. That's why I've always been in education. But it's also thinking about the voices that aren't always included at the table, and populations of whether it's students or families or community members that aren't included, that are historically either excluded or haven't been invited to the table. And I like to think that my awareness of those issues and the conversations that I've had and the work that I've done to engage those communities gives me some insights. It doesn't mean I know everything. It doesn't mean that I'm always learning, and sometimes I don't get it right. But I think part of it is, if you're not willing to engage in those hard conversations and put yourself in those situations to learn and grow, it's hard to. So anyway, that's a little bit of, I think, what I bring to the table. The last thing I'll say is I've experienced from literally in education, working from birth through college and career. So that's also a different sliver, right? Our district and this school board race, it's about people with kids in the district and people who don't have kids in the district. It's people with young kids, people with older kids, people with middle kids. So it's a little bit about what I bring to the table, I think.
Great, John. Thank you. The next question we chose was, which of the statements in the strategic framework under mission, goals, we believe, or focus areas resonates most with what you feel you bring to the board and why?
Once again, another good question. Whoever picked these questions, nice job, by the way. There's a lot in the mission statement and the strategic goals and vision. There's a lot of good. And I think things that resonate, relationships, having been a teacher, having worked in education, I think relationships are the basis for doing the good work, doing hard work. And so absolutely, I agree with that. Equity, once again, I think that resonates deeply with me. And I think, when I think of equity, I also bring in and think about inclusivity and diversity as well. I think they sort of pair and partner nicely together. But I think what's nice is the district has really been talking about equity a lot more. And I think there's more to do, but I think there's a great start. Usually when you start to think about what really does resonate, it's also looking at it. I think, it's important to be thoughtful and think about constructive criticism, right? And I think that's where with the strategic plan, there are options or some improvements that could be made. So under the goals, something that resonates, but not in the best way with me, is all students are academically and socially ready for school. So my experience teaching kindergarten and being in early ed is, I strongly believe that our schools must be ready for the students. The student's job is to show up when they're age eligible for school. And I think we have a goal that starts to create a dynamic where there are expectations placed on students that are inappropriate for 5-year-olds. So I think that's a goal that can be rethought and should be rethought. I think all third graders can read at grade level. That's an aspirational goal, which has the best intentions. But when I think of our students who are multilingual learners, and when I think of our students with different abilities, and our students perhaps that have had some traumatic events in their lives, I can't help but think when you have a goal that is so aspirational that for some students it won't be achievable, I put myself in the lens of the student and the family. And it starts to create a dynamic where if you don't see yourself in the goal, you don't even see it as a possibility. That's not the best way to start your work and work with the system. I think the system needs to be structured in a way where everyone can see themselves present and in that. And so that's just a little thought. Again, I think there's a lot of good in the strategic vision, but I think there's some opportunities there too.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for the feedback. Is there any final thoughts you'd like to leave us with as we wrap up the interview?
Gosh, I could leave you with many thoughts. I will try to keep it short. And it's been quite a couple of years. And so I think it's important to give a quick nod to the school board who have made the great decision to require masks. And that's all about getting our students in schools safely. And so I think it's important to credit that. At the same time, I think there's room for improvement. And I think there's a lot that we can do. I think it's great that we have so many people who are invested in this race for school board. And, I want to just say thank you to the PTAs for hosting this. Thank you for your time. And I encourage people to go out and vote. Vote for your top 3 candidates. And I encourage you to vote yes for the school levy.
Wonderful. Well, thanks for the time, John, and good luck at the polls in a couple of weeks. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
You bet.